Hey everyone, welcome to Metal Connects. Ken Rakowski, and I am honored today to have somebody who I've been following for the longest time. I've had the opportunity to read for his first two books, and they were not just enlightening, but I have to say it's part of the core of who I am. And the whole idea is around community and connection to community. And Keith has taken it to a whole new level when it comes to the idea of corporate community, but making sure you're connecting with the people that work for you and not looking at them as employees, but as team members. Keith Ferrazzi is joining us. Keith, great to have you here with us.
Ken, I could not tell you how excited I am to see you. I love being with you, my friend.
I appreciate that. Hey, let's dive into chapter 2 of the book. And I want to talk about
my favorite.
Of apologies, talking about forgiveness.
Yeah.
And why it's so important in building your teams to be able to understand what you have the right to do and what you don't have the right to do, and why being empathetic is so important.
So the chapter is called It's All on You. It's all on you. Because I have found so many times in my life that either myself, I mean, I just look back at my own life. I've had like 4 CEOs at Ferrazzi Greenlight. And it's amazing how I could give you the reasons why any of those 4 CEOs were not the right person for the job. But you know what one thing is in common of all 4 of those CEOs? Me. And if I step back and realize why I blocked them from success, it's shameful. And so at the end of the day, anything that we want to achieve in this world, it's really all on us. I fundamentally believe in the possibility of humanity and the possibility of individuals. Hey, Stephen, good to see you as you're chewing down there in the corner. I believe in the possibility of people. And I have written off a lot of relationships and a lot of people because they didn't meet whatever standards I felt they needed to meet. And in retrospect, the reality was I didn't spend the time to co-elevate that relationship to create the kind of opportunity that could have existed. And I see it in large companies all the time. I work in companies and, somebody's sitting there saying, oh, you don't understand this co-elevation idea, this going higher together, the bullshit people I have to work with, you just don't understand. And I pause for a moment and I'm like, who are you getting your effing paycheck from? I mean, your job is to get the damn job done. And I think about this and like the reflection I have, I might have said this the other day, but I bring it up a lot. I have 2 foster children. My younger foster son was 12 when he came into the house, desperately angry kid. He's now 21. I understand why he's angry. And there were lots of times that like I'd go to bed literally worried if at some point my life would be taken by this young man. Seriously. I mean, like I thought it was a 50-50 shot. That's how I would die. But at no point did I have the right to say, I will be your father when you act like my son. You just don't have that right. Now, you show up as a leader, and most of us in this room lead our own companies, right? But let's put that aside for just one second. Let's assume one of the people in your company shows up, wants to be transformative, and the next thing you know, he's pointing fingers at everybody else as to why he can't or she can't. Bullshit. You have no right to abdicate your possibility of transformation, to abdicate your responsibility to lead. And frankly, even us as entrepreneurs, we have no damn right to abdicate our responsibility to be extraordinary and to be great because we blame other people. And I've done that plenty of times in my life. And that's what this chapter is all about. And I talk about in the chapter, the 6 deadly excuses why we are not transformative, why we aren't leaning in and working with other people to create extraordinary outcomes. Ignorance is one of them, but as soon as you read the book, you can't be ignorant anymore because you got to realize that that's what it is. Laziness is another one because it's tough work. It's tough work to deal with assholes. But I don't give a damn. I mean, dealing with assholes, sometimes you just got to do that to get shit done. And so the principle of abdicating responsibility because it's tough, I don't buy it. Deference. Now, this happens a lot. I don't think anybody here in this room is deferent. But actually, that's not true. Andrew, I called you on it yesterday. It's like we as individuals, but we cannot be deferent. We cannot have deference we can't look up to authority or power or prestige or money and think we don't deserve to be there. Damn it. If we're there, we deserve to be there. Playing the victim. I have heard more bad words used, pointing fingers at people inside of a company than ever people think about pointing fingers at competition. Seriously, there's more people blaming each other inside of a company than competition, than faced on the competition. And we're victims of this cowardice. And I get this, I'm not an easy guy. Who was it? One of your members the other day in a breakout room said, Keith, I love you. A lot of people think you're an asshole. And, at first I was like, okay, thank you very much for that. Well, will you please give me the names of the people so I can go make amends? That was my first thought, right? But, it's difficult sometimes to speak up to authority, speak up to charisma, etc. But again, cowardice is no excuse for not to find a way in to have your words heard. And the last one I love is indulgence. How many of us have people in our lives that we have to work with that we have grown almost complacent and enjoyable with not liking them? It's like we're like, maybe it's a brother or a sister or somebody, but it's like we've grown complacent with a relationship and we're almost indulgent by continuing to nurture the resentment in bad relationships. Anyway, the long and the short of this whole chapter comes back to say, no, it's on you. It's on you. It's all on you. Any relationship you can't manage, damn it, it's on you. And if you want to be great in this world, you got to work with tough people. You got to work around people. You got to work with people. Anyway, that was a long answer.
Well, it's not. But I think
it's
a
simple question about chapter 2.
It says a lot about you, Keith, because I met you actually with Tony Robbins at the Ritz-Carlton. That's how I initially met you.
Wow.
I met you. It was the three of us. We were in the conference room or whatever. And I remember walking away going, that's a strong guy. And I wasn't talking about Tony. I was talking about you. And then as I got to...
Tony's a huge guy. I'll be a strong guy. He's a huge guy.
His hand fits around our head easily, right?
Jim.
But as I got to know you, you're a very driven guy. Because you're driven and you have a vision of what the outcome is going to be, it's very easy for you to tell an executive, this is what you got to do, you go do it, and you almost allow them to be the pilot to get to that destination. They get to understand how to fly their equipment. You, being driven in your own team, at times that team can't go the speed you want or the time parameter to get to where you want to go. And that's got to frustrate people that are strong-willed and strong-minded. How do you make sure you set the pace to achieve that location, that distance, so the whole team arrives there at the same time?
I'll use an analogy. I was coaching an executive team once, and the executive was a bit of a jackass. And I'd seen him shut down a number of people in the meeting. And I sat there and I thought, okay, I did a little calculus in the back of my envelope. And I said, yeah, this is a big company. Most people there were making $500,000 on the room, so with stock and options, maybe, $750,000 to $1 million. I did a little bit of calculus, right? And I figured, okay, so he shut a bunch of people down. He shut 2 people down, but you could tell the mood in the room just went down. The people he shut down probably for a day, right? The people that were around the room, he probably shut down for an hour. And I did a little calculus and I said, okay, when I was done, I said, Eddie, do me a favor. would you please write me a check for 150,000 bucks? He's like, what do you mean? I said, look, it's perfectly acceptable. In that meeting, if I do the calculus of how many people were in that room, what level of engagement, do you think that they're bounding out of that room with 150% excitement about their job? Or are they crawling out of that room with 10 to 25%, right, tail between their legs? And I said, that's fine. You own the fucking company. Do whatever you want to do. But you realize that your indulgence, your ability to sort of just indulge yourself in ridiculing those individuals has wasted you about $150,000 according to my calculus. And you can take a look at the math. Maybe it's up or down, whatever it is. But congratulations, you just burned 150. Did that feel good? Was that $150,000 worth of burning money good for you? And I think about that all the time for myself. I think about how my impetuousness, my drive, my ambition, all of these things will end up degrading the exact people that I need to get the job done. Here I am frustrated they're not getting the job done. They're not keeping the pace. And all I'm doing is I'm actually burning money, making them less capable of getting the job done than they otherwise were. And that's all on me, right? So by the way, and I don't like being a poor guy. I mean, I was poor and when I was growing up. I don't want to be poor anymore. And when I start to calculate the return on my indulgence, I start to realize I got to start behaving differently. And so I don't know if that helps an entrepreneur, but most of us don't want to think about burning 150,000 bucks. And yet there are ways in which our activity sometimes does that. And not all of you. Many of you are much better leaders than I am. So, I just write about this stuff and I research it. I don't necessarily do it all the time. So, I'm here to serve you all as best as I can. But I can tell you from my own personal experiences, it can be sometimes tough.
Guys, you got a question, comment, or idea, please put it inside the chat and then I'll unmute you. Again, we're with Keith Ferrazzi. Hey, Keith, I don't want you to identify the company, but you work with some big brands around the world constantly. And when you walk in, they may not be what you expected the issue to be on the surface. And then you come in and you see it's a train wreck situation. Does that train wreck situation generally say it's a top-down problem?
Yeah.
Is it always generally right at the top?
I've it's a great question. I think everything's always at the top. It's like great leaders lead great companies. And yet I can say that fixing it doesn't always have to come from the top. So if I go into a company and there is a problem, and when I say from the top, it could just be the entire layer at the top has always, behaved that way. The entire organization has been deferential to leadership, and leadership doesn't really open up and desire to have challenge or inclusion. Meetings are like tumbleweeds rolling, right? They're quiet and pristine, and the only people talking are the people with the most authority. I mean, that's just such bullshit. But I have to say, I would be curious if you've ever been in a situation where you've taken up most of the oxygen in the room in your own companies. It's like, it's the same thing. And so we are all responsible for the failure and the success of our teams. I was having this conversation with my CEO earlier today. We were talking about two associates that were challenging. And his point of view was, I don't know that they're going to make it. And I said, well, before we go to that, we have to ask ourselves, why are we failing them? Like, why are we failing to lead them in a way that make them effective? And that's what I was trying to say earlier, in that I think people are extraordinary and people are resilient. The question is, are you an artful enough leader to be able to bring that out of them even when it's not their inclination?
Yeah, it's kind of like a Charlie's Angels, right? You have to get the talent out of them and then direct them where they need to go. Richard Burke, why don't you ask your question?
Hey, Keith. I'm a believer in organizations that set goals and guidelines as principles from the top, but that empower troops. it sounded like what you were saying is that the common failure was you abdicated your responsibility to lead to the CEOs, and who then ultimately failed. How are you avoiding micromanaging or otherwise allowing them to be empowered if you don't also allow them to fail?
By the way, your philosophy of leadership is very similar to another Richard. I was in backstage one time with Richard Branson, and I said, God, I'm so happy to meet you, because I'm a variety junkie, and I've never met a leader as unfocused as you and as successful. God bless you. How do you do it, right? And his point is, he creates the environment for success. He raises the capital, he manages the brand, and then he lets people go and run with whatever they need to run with. But he says, the thing that I do is I kill things really quick if they're going to bleed me, right? So from his perspective, he has a very different portfolio management theory. He's like, I'll spread my seed everywhere. I'll see what grows, what doesn't grow, I kill it quick, and then I continue to nurture that stuff. And I don't know if that's your philosophy or not, but I find that very interesting, that empowering philosophy. And it works for him. I'm not saying that you need to be micromanaging, but I've come to the conclusion that some of the greatest leaders in the world are also the greatest managers. They understand the business in detail. They run weekly agile sprints, whether physically or verbally in their head. They know what everybody's supposed to do. They get collaborative stand-ups on a weekly basis, and they readjust and they pivot, but they're always that nexus point. Now, again, I'd be actually interested in having a back and forth with you, Richard, on this, either here in the room or elsewhere. But I think managers, I think there's maybe a philosophy of running a portfolio, and then it's a financial decision of how do you cut things off, but let people run, choosing the right people, cut them off quickly. That's a philosophy. But if you're actually managing a business, then I think you have insight into those sprints, and it is your job to bring energy, to bring celebration, to bring reward. But then, to the point of my new book, that's so painful that what I try to do is I try to diffuse into my teams the responsibility of supporting each other, of coaching each other, of giving each other feedback. This is a new idea where we get out of being in the middle of hub and spoke, and we actually make the people who are, quote, working for us responsible for each other's success. The principle of co-elevation is that a team of people crosses the finish line together, damn it. And if the head of sales makes their numbers and they're looking back, pointing the finger on the head of marketing and pissed off that marketing is not doing their job, my view is bullshit. Get back there, bring your resources, bring your talent, make sure the head of marketing gets coached to understand what you know and get them across the finish line. But most of our teams are just earnestly trying to do their own job. I want them to not only do their own job, but put 20% of their brains on making sure that their peers do their job. And that is a different social contract among teams. But when I start to ignite that, I have found extraordinary breakthrough outcomes, and it frees up the leader to no longer be the hub and spoke of everything. That it actually starts diffusing the responsibility of elevation and leadership into the team itself. And that's where co-elevation is from. But Richard or anybody else, feel free to rough me up on that if you want.
Richard?
Yeah, well, a lot of this goes back to different management styles, such as that are demonstrated in various industries or even the military, where, for example, the American soldier was far more empowered than the Japanese soldier was, who, there was a change of events, needed to turn to their higher authority to see what to do next, whereas the American soldier improvised when he needed to. It's the same in the way you can look at two different retail organizations, such as Walmart and Costco. Costco hires a higher quality employee and empowers them to make decisions on how to customer relationships and other aspects of their job, and Walmart sets things up with the tight rules to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah. And they both kind of work. Right? I mean, and the question is, do they in different circumstances? I feel like we're moving into a world where radical adaptability will be the premium. And you need to have your business able to pivot and run. And I don't think you can prescribe jobs at that level. Part of my idea of co-elevation is the philosophy that, you can't, as a leader, you can't be there to help people adapt. You've got to let the team do that for each other, which, let me just add one thing. I think first of all, the work I do is at the team level. A lot of us talk about strategy, and then we dive into whether roles are getting their job done. There's an entity called the team. Is the team effective? And how the interdependencies of a team work are usually under-curated. It's not something that we spend enough time on. Sports teams do. Jordan start passing the ball, then they start winning. There's a team coach, but we don't team coach. Our executive coaching is individual in nature. I believe that the team as an entity needs focus. And we've been having a team diagnostic for 15 years now. 71% of teams claim that they cannot speak up candidly in the room. 74% of teams don't believe that their innovation in their job gets benefit from being a part of the team. Meaning they do their thing and then they plug in. Mm-hmm. Like, there's some really serious shit broken in teams. And we don't spend enough time looking at the team element. And that's what I try to do in the new book. Leading Without Authority makes the team recognize they are responsible for the team's success, not just the leader. My shorthand of it is we go from overload as a leader to shared load, where we start to disperse that responsibility.
Hey, right at Saturday's show, I made sure I bought a copy of the book. I just bought another copy of the book. You guys, Lead Without Authority, How New Power of Co-Elevation Can, that's all it says, by the way, because it clips it off, just to let you know, Keith. Amazon doesn't allow the whole.
Can break down silos, transform teams, and reinvent collaboration. Look at you, you bought 2 copies. Thank you very much.
Heck yeah. Every time I'll see you, I'll buy one. How's that? You want to see me as often as possible? So guys, make sure you get this. I want you to empower yourself to get this, because whatever it costs is so worth the value of the education and knowledge you're going to get from that. Also, yeah. I want to say, JD, you freaking rock, because you're driving and you got your Zoom camera on. So that means Harak and Eric and Jeff, I love to see your cameras on too. I like to see your faces because we're in a community together. It's good to see all of us, right? It's great. There you go. Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you, Eric.
I love seeing, Eric.
Eric, you look fantastic. You're sitting outside with your beautiful friend there. Why would you not turn your camera on?
Yes, I love seeing it. Paul, Harak, if you do the same thing. Let's go over to, I'm just going to do these in order, guys. David, and I know David always has a question that just goes on because he's got so much substance he wants to share. David, go for it.
When I was in my consulting days, I was brought into a company, and this is pretty common. There's one faction that feels something should change, but senior management is going, no, no, no. They bring in the consultant to basically say what they want said. And in this case, what they wanted said was very, very legitimate. So I said it in my own way. Management gets furious at me. Those guys get to save their jobs. I'm out. And I'd been warned this happened, and then it happened. Have you ever faced this, and how do you handle it?
Let me make sure I understand. You were a consultant, and you told management what they didn't want to hear. They kicked you out, but the job got done, right?
No, I don't think it ever did. I think that I was the last gasp effort of the group that wanted this thing done.
So I tell you, I'm hypothesizing.
Here, I'll just get down and dirty if we can just keep this confidential. So the company was Tyson, and basically
the chicken food, the chickens.
Yeah, they were talking to Chipotle, and Chipotle wanted farm raised, natural raised chickens and meat, and so Tyson was exploring getting into, believe it or not, kind of the whole organic, free range meat, chicken and cow area and creating a new brand. And the group wanted this brand to not be called Tyson because they wanted a whole separate identity, just like Lexus is not called Toyota. Obviously, it's the right thing to do. But management said, like, we're that makes us feel like we're embarrassed. Tyson is embarrassed to be Tyson if we have to create a better brand than Tyson. That was basically the dispute.
Yeah.
And then I get canned. I mean, it was okay. I didn't mind being canned for the right reasons.
One contract, I get it. I'll tell you what I do. I mean, I don't consider myself a consultant. I'm a coach and I'm a facilitator of teams. In a situation like that, I would have facilitated a group dialogue, and I would have broken the team down into small groups, and I would have laid the groundwork where the leaders would have awakened to the realization if they don't hear what their people are saying, they're burning money, like that analogy I used earlier, right? Because at the end of the day, if we literally don't want to hear the truth, we are burning money. It's like when I was at Starwood Hotels, we get these marketing reports. Would I ever take a marketing report and say, oh, I'm afraid that marketing report is going to tell me something, I don't want to hear it, I'm putting it in my drawer? That'd be ridiculous. But leaders all the time shy away from hearing truth because for some other reason we don't want to. So I bring that out. My coaching brings that onto the table like a turd. And I'm like, listen, if we don't hear this stuff, you are stealing from shareholders. Conflict avoidance and is cowardice. And it raises risk and it limits, innovation. So I spend a lot of time making people realize that the old social contract that we used to have is low integrity. I really do. I get violent about this. I consider it stealing from shareholders. So the fact that those leaders would not even want to hear the truth, I would navigate a conversation until they were backed into a corner to realize that of course they want to hear the truth. So that once they say they want to hear the truth, then I would lay the groundwork for the team in small incremental doses to be more and more courageous while I'm in the room. My job as a coach in the room is to make people courageous to say the things that they needed to say that they wouldn't have had this chance to say otherwise. And I would have gotten to the point where I wouldn't have had to say it. It wasn't my point. It would have been the team that would have been able to say it, and the leaders would have been embarrassed if they did anything other than listen to it. And then we see where we want to go. It's small baby steps. So my whole intention is always trying to drive a behavior change into the fabric of a team so that they can wake up and behave differently, so that they can wake up and redeem a new social contract. Sitting in a room and not saying what you're thinking is like stealing from an expense report.
Ouch.
I know that sounds ridiculous because we've all sat in rooms and not said what we're thinking. But that kind of cowardice that prevents movement is stealing from shareholders. And that's the kind of stuff I try to bring to the table. And in Leading Without Authority, I do the same thing. I try to unveil these old social norms that have been broken for 20 years that we have to reboot. And I think right now is a great damn time to reboot those social norms.
Who has bought the book? Who bought the book? I want to see some hands. Who hasn't? The hands that are not up, make sure you get the book. Let's get that done. Keith is giving us his time right now. We should give him there you go. I like seeing that. That's what I want to see, Lanre. Hey, one of my best friends in the world, Lanre, you have a question for Keith? Go for it.
Keith, thank you again for doing this, and thank you for the chat last night with the Foundry. Very, very, very inspirational.
Did you get any movement leaders with you last night?
Yeah. Looks like a lot of guys reached out and are willing to jump into the trenches. So I really, really appreciate you inspiring me to say something. And that's kind of my question. They say one of the hardest things in the world to do is to lead a volunteer army. So I wanted to know what suggestions do you have to encourage, inspire, and direct like optional engagement in a sustainable way.
Beautiful.
Everybody gets distracted, everybody gets focused. What do you have that keeps people inspired?
So So first of all, I think that everybody in the world who's a leader is leading a volunteer army. And once you understand that, you'll be a better leader. In that, you know, I've got X number of people reporting to me, but if I can't keep their energy high, right, then I'm not leading anything. So I think these days people show up like gig workers, like Uber workers every day. They decide whether they're turning the clock on or off. And it's our job to make sure we're leading them. So to that end, Lanre, you've got to ask yourself a question. So the first thing I would do, so I don't know if anybody knows about this. Last night, Lanre expressed his deep hurt at the death of a gentleman at a policeman's hands, and he was deeply concerned about it. He wanted to do something about it. And I said, well, go ahead and recruit a group of people that will co-create what to do. I said, Lanre, you don't have to have this on your shoulders. Go build a movement. Go figure it out. Seriously, guys, Martin Luther King was one dude. Gandhi was one dude, right? You know, these people were one person, and they created a movement. But they didn't create a movement. They enlisted people to create a movement. So there was nothing in my mind when I said that to Lanre, I had no idea, but it could have been the tipping point of hundreds of thousands of people making a difference with a vision that Lanre instigated. That's up to all of us. Any day we want, we could each instigate a movement. And by the way, that could be a company or that could be a social situation, right? But the way you do that, and it's a great question, which is, how do you keep people enlisted? Whether it's your company or whether it's a social movement, and it's serve, share, and care, chapter 3. Serve, share, and care. Everybody as a member of your movement has to believe that they're doing it for them. Not even the mission, by the way. Very few of them will be driven by the mission. I talk about organizations that are always touting their missions. There are very few people who take a paycheck from you that are in it for the mission. Right? I mean, very few. Even those of you who actually have an organization that have enough of a mission that matter. Tony Hsieh from Zappos, pretty interesting company. And, you know, part of his mission is to reinvent management and leadership. Even he has a difficult time motivating people just on the mission. At the end of the day, you motivate people for them. So Lanre, what is it that the first thing I would do is, knowing that you need a team, I would look at the list of people who, quote, signed up last night. And I would do 2 things. The first thing I would do is I would put a metric from 0 to 5 on how engaged you think each of those people are. Like, were they bullshitting and just interesting and hanging out because it was a cool thing to talk about and politically correct at the moment? Or do you think they're fucking in, right? And there's no judgment in either of those, right? 5 is I'm fucking in. I'm in like you are, Lanre, right? 0 is I was hanging out, right? You figure out, that's one element. That's one part of the algorithm. The next part of the algorithm you should ask yourself is, why are they in? What, you know, like, what is the motivation for them to be in? Once you understand the 4s and the 5s, so take a look at the 4s and the 5s. So Stephen is 100% in. Why? I'm just making this up. He wasn't in there last night. But Stephen's 100% in. Why? Because Stephen is 100% in on anything that he thinks might make a dent in the world. He'll be in for like a dog shit patrol if he thinks that's going to make a difference in the world, because Stephen's all about making a difference in the world. Once you understand what Stephen's blue flame is, then you got it. But then somebody else, on the other hand, they're in it for the brand. And there's nothing wrong. If you want to make a movement change, I guarantee you, people in the civil rights movement, there were a number of them that were in it because they wanted to elevate their own personal brand in their local community. There is nothing wrong with that if they're going to activate to make a difference in your movement, right? Go through the individuals one by one and you ask yourself, what are they in it for? And then you ask yourself, how can I serve them? There's a lot of work involved here. And if you just keep focusing on your passion for the movement and your rightness, that this movement is right, you're going to look back and you're not going to have many followers. You got to look back at the crowd of people that signed up, and you need to say, what's in it for them? What's the movement? What's the purpose of the movement, and how do I serve them? Right? Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Focus on the kind of selfish motivators. What's in it for
And
them.
yeah, I don't want to use that word selfish because it sounds like it's got negative connotations. You've got to light people up.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's going to light people up is centric to what lights them up, not what lights you up.
Got it.
So leaders that stand in front of an audience touting the movement of their company, when the people in the room haven't bonded to that movement, it's bullshit. It's irrelevant.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you, Lonre.
Thank you.
Buddy.
Thank
owe me
you.
a call, Lonre. You owe me a phone call.
I called you.
Oh, I was driving.
back.
Oh, bad cell reception.
That's such a Ken moment. That's such a Ken moment. I love it.
That's great. Thanks, buddy. Hey, by the way, just want to remind you guys, tomorrow, Dave Asprey's with us at 1.
I
And then
love it.
William Quigley is at 5. And then this week, we have Scott Painter, Akon, Charlie. We have an amazing lineup for this Saturday. So you guys.
Ken, seriously, that's like, I am humbled that you even let me in this crew. Thank you.
It's a killer. You know what, Keith, blows my mind? People want to share it. They've become to this point to where they have absorbed so much, and now they're sitting, and these leaders are at this point, they know they can lead with knowledge, and they're so accessible if you ask them. Don't assume they're going to do it. Ask them.
Yeah.
And people are just mentoring like crazy. Hey, I want to make sure these questions get answered. Let's go over to
Isaac. Isaac's got his finger up.
No, I got to go in order. Hang on, guys.
Oh, sorry, Isaac.
John Vitale. John, go for it, buddy. John.
Sorry, you guys got me now. Thank you. Thanks for doing this. I'm a big fan. I've read the
thanks.
first couple books. I can't wait to dive into this one. So going back to goal setting and OKRs, and again, I haven't read the latest book yet, but I've been in a couple of teams. Our team at Focus at Will, we've kind of dabbled in OKRs. I've studied many organizations that killed it. How do you get a small team of 5 really engaged in OKRs? We kind of start it, we get goal oriented, and I watch people fall off. They don't hit them. They don't kind of do the check-ins. Like, how do you really get people to buy in and really start using that kind of system?
Okay, RKRs. Okay, OKRs. What's that stand for?
OKRs, objectives and key results. So it's the system that Google uses to empower individuals to set goals within their lines.
John Doerr wrote a book on it, and he created a software firm called BetterWorks, all focused on it, etc. Oh yeah, you have John Doerr's book there, Richard?
Yeah, of course he does.
Or is there a better system that you think is even more updated? What do you recommend? I'm totally
Look, here's the thing. And John, I'm going to say something. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but you and I are both the same. If our team isn't bought into OKRs, it's because we're not bought into OKRs. You like the idea of it, but the discipline that it takes to keep reminding people and caring about it and being rigorous about it and hosting the meetings and calling the meetings and managing the meetings, all of those things relative to leadership, it's tough for entrepreneurs. It is tough because, I'm a variety junkie. I love multiple different things. I'm running around doing, my travel and all these things. It's tough to narrow in and to make this a value for the company. It's really all about us. OKRs fall apart when the leader cares less about them than they should. And that's really all what it is. I mean, what we focus on at the top is what matters. Now, let me just give you a slightly modified version. Have you spent any time looking at agile leadership?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think Agile's a lighter version of OKRs. OKRs is pretty damn rigorous. You get these top level objectives, you cascade them down, everything's metricable, it's pretty tough. On the other hand, if you just do, with 5 people you said, if you do a weekly stand-up where everybody agrees, what am I going to do in the coming week? Write it down. And you can put it in Asana or some program. Here are the 5 things I'm going to do for the week. And when you show up next week, just ask the question, did I do it? What was I struggling with? And what am I going to do for the next week? just putting simple weekly stand-ups together, I find really gives you the discipline that you need to start meeting and exceeding goals. OKRs really require an engineering mindset that a lot of people don't have.
Could I add to that question really quick? I'll keep it
Please.
brief. So we do that for product. Like if in terms of dev and making feature requests, we're in Jira, we're doing that all the time. But in terms of the company goals and the mission of the company and where we really want to get the big picture items is where this is kind of falling apart.
And that's why I say use executive agile.
So we do that. We do the stand-ups on a daily, and you think that a vision meeting once a week would do this kind of thing and get us back on track?
More so.
Okay, great. Thanks.
The problem with daily is it's actually interesting. I think weekly sprints is the answer. People don't even have time. When you do daily sprints, people don't even have time to document the sprints. But if you really do that, the other thing is, look, there's lots of systems, outside systems. Dan Sullivan's got a good one. Vern Harnish has a good one. You know, you could bring in some of these outside systems, Rockefeller principles, that really start to try to coach this kind of discipline, and maybe get an outside coach. You know, get an agile coach, get a coach on this kind of discipline work. It's tough.
Are you available?
No. Well, I don't know. It depends on your market cap. But no.
Gotta ask, right?
Yeah. Thanks, though.
Yeah. All right. Again, guys, please make sure you get the book. Amazon. Where do you want us to go, Keith? Amazon's okay with you?
Yeah, if you're buying one copy, buy it on Amazon. If you buy, I don't know if you guys know this, when your buddies produce books, if you bought 20 copies on Amazon, Amazon reports that to the New York Times as one book.
Yeah.
So if you're buying a bunch of books, you go to a place called Porchlight. They actually report every book as a distinct purchase. Just a little factoid that you probably don't care about, but.
All right, let's go to Eric Rice, who's hanging out with his wife.
Wait, Eric, where's Eric Rice?
Eric Rice, where are you, buddy?
He's gone. Oh, there he is.
There he is.
How you doing, Keith? I'm a big fan. I think the thing you said today that kind of hit exact example from today is about corporate integrity, and integrity from all aspects has really gotten gray over these years. So exact example from today is I've got a fantastic team that the day the pandemic began, the next morning I was on the phone with the entire team telling them not to come into work and that pay has been cut in half, and I'd be more than happy to do anything I can to help them out on a personal level. I had 0 people complain, 0. Not one person said, you know, that's not fair. They all said, we understand what we're working for. We're going towards this goal. Wow. We've really focused in on the last 2 months. We've gotten further than we've gotten in the last year because we haven't wasted a minute. So as a reward, I ended up, you know, I don't have a lot of cash to throw around and pay them back pay, but I got our government loan. I put them back on normal pay. I will bonus them out on revenue and what they're doing to incentivize them. But I also took every one of their stock options and I dropped their strike price by about 40%.
Nice.
Now, that is a reward that I think in this environment we're in of uncertainty, that you should be motivating people to make impact in their own life, not just the company, like their own personal life. It's a big part of our culture. And doing this, you know, I was very happy about it. I was ecstatic for some of these people and their families and the way that our stock's moving. It's a great time and a great position. However, I get a note from a trader, a Wall Street guy going, you just screwed this up with me. How do you lower your employee strike price? You should be raising it so they work harder. And, you know, about 2 years ago, I might've gotten upset and replied, but I just kind of laughed and sent him an email back going, clearly you don't understand business these days. It's not 1952 with mines to dig through.
Are you publicly traded?
Yes.
Interesting. You know, look, you led this by talking about integrity. I think that we need to redefine integrity in the workplace. I think there's a lot of stuff that if you really expose truth, people will realize we've been acting with low integrity for a long time. Things like, as I mentioned earlier, not speaking up in a room, conflict avoidance, like talking, I'll give you, speaking behind each other's backs. We as leaders, we got to stop that practice. If we allow members of our staff to come to us behind other people's backs and have conversations with them, with you, but they won't have it directly with their peers. And yet we foster that by listening. We foster that by trying to play this intermediary role. I think part of that is actually, many of us may do that out of our own insecurity or sense of need for power or something, because we all of a sudden become important, that everybody's coming to us for the negotiation behind the scenes. I want a fully transparent family in my business. I want my business to be able to speak truth to each other because we respect each other, we care for each other, and we wouldn't hold anything back. So, I mean, like I've been working hard, and I talk about this in the book, because when you have a group of people that don't have authority to lean on, like your manager gives you feedback, that's the old rules. But in this new world, I'm working with a bunch of people that don't report to me. Who gives who feedback? Your manager, who doesn't even see the work you're doing? The reality is we got to give each other feedback, just like we would with our brother or sister that we care about, because we care about them, we're giving them feedback, right? So I just think this principle of integrity, we've been living in business that I think is not living up to a level of integrity for the new world. By the way, congratulations on how you handled that.
Oh, thank you. I completely agree with you. I mean, the thing that we focus in on, you know, we built in purposes in our culture. You know, anything that we assess or think of, does it serve the highest good? Is it serving the highest possible good? There's many good extensions from, you know, customers feeling great, revenue, all that kind of stuff. When you approach everything from that, does everything you do serve the highest good at that moment? It refocuses people. And the big thing that I've learned along this way is that every problem at the corporate level exists in breakdowns in trust. Either the individual loses trust in their own decision making, or they lose trust in the loyalty of the others that are surrounded with them. So I even got the damn word tattooed on my forearm so that I read it every day. Trust. You must trust the people you work with, and trust that you are exactly where you're supposed to be. If you can't do that, you can't really succeed.
By the way, that's intention. One of my clients got the word co-elevation tattooed on his forearm. I was like,
that's a lot more pain.
I'm like, fuck yeah. I got a word that I created tattooed on someone's body that I'm not having sex with. I think that's amazing.
Thanks, Eric.
You bet. Thank you, Keith. Thanks, Ken.
Let's go to Mr. King James. King James, what is your question?
Good evening, Keith. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. I think I'm really fascinated with the themes that you're presenting tonight and the opportunity for us to expand on them. It seems like these are pretty much kind of universal conscious themes that are now, you know, being appropriated in the modern world. There was definitely opportunity to expand and expand and create new paradigms in the way that we lead and connect as a species and also as a company. My question is just want to also acknowledge that this idea of taking responsibility and taking 100% responsibility is a very, very deep practice, because it basically urges us to look within, and rather than pointing the finger, there are three pointing back, and looking within actually opens up the opportunity to delve into the fountain of incredible good, wisdom, and compassion. And I think in that respect, I think what you're kind of outlining is what are the battles, or what are the most important things that you choose, or a company or a leader chooses to focus on? Because as leaders, we have so many things that kind of draw and distract our attention. And in that respect, my question is, you know, how do you unite people with different and with unique people or teams with their inherent uniqueness, and different agendas and different minds and hearts, into a sort of convergent, co-elevating purpose and state? I think you've kind of touched on that already, but I'm just wondering.
Yeah, maybe not though. Maybe not. First of all, I wish I could speak like you. I mean, that's just like anything I would say would sound smarter, more eloquent, just more lovely. It'd be great.
So I reassure you, it's not about the words, it's about the intention of how you want to make people feel.
Amen. I hear you, and I feel it.
So in this respect, human beings do not work in a straight line. So with all the greatest systems and all the greatest knowledge, if we don't apply wisdom and create value with everything that we have, then we just continue the same cycles. So I really respect and honor this conversation and the paradigm that you're bringing to the table and reminding us of.
No, thank you. Well, I'm trying to address two different things. First of all, you touched on your admiration of this principle of it's all on you. That, by the way, was something that was taught to me by somebody that some of you might know. He's probably the leading 12-step recovery therapist in Los Angeles, maybe the world, a guy named Sean McFarlane. He's on the West Side in Venice, Sean McFarlane. He's in the book a few times. I fucked up a number of times when I was about, maybe 8 years ago, 9 years ago. And I really needed a coach that I thought could kick me in the ass and help me. And I went to Sean as an individual coach. And he taught me something because he really has embroiled the 12 steps. And I started studying the 12 steps. A lot of the work that I have brought to teams is what the 12-step programs, which the Dalai Lama claims is God's gift for the last 200 years to mankind. The commitment that a group of men and women have to each other in that 12-step program is really extraordinary. I want to bring that same commitment into the workplace without all of the addictions and religious overtones. But there was one thing that the 12-step programs teach you, and it's always ask the question, what's my part? In anything that goes wrong in your life, ask the question, what's my part? And if you think the answer is nothing, then you don't have it yet. And until you can really define what your part is, and maybe James, this is one of the things you were commenting on at the end, right? What's your intention? Until you really have the capacity to define what your part is, you can never really make a shift in another person's behavior. And I just want to put that out there. The other thing you're talking about is the sense that this is a very universal set of principles. It really is. I mean, I don't know what I know we're not talking about religion, but, like I've studied all religions. I was brought up Christian. I love the practices of Buddha. I've studied meditation, in depth. And there's an equanimity in the values of, if you look at all the religions, you tie them together and look at the core values that attach to all of them. This principle of co-elevation, of having each other's back, exists in all of them. But, the problem is religion has lost a lot of those basic values that the original teachers talked about, right? And why is it, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a preacher. Stephen and I have talked about this as he's hosted services on Sundays at my home around my piano. I always wanted to be a preacher when I was a kid. And I wake up today and I realize it's better than that, because I have people 5 days a week, not just one. Monday through Friday in the Church of Capitalism, I'm helping people become their best self. And I love that permission that I have. And to me, and you said this as well, James, the real principle of co-elevation, the real element of co-elevation to me is a set of values that I want to live my life by. I'm the single man today for 6 years, on 5 years. And the reason I've remained single is because I refuse to get into another relationship until I know my partner is my co-elevating partner. Because I've never had that in my life. I've been married twice and I wasn't in a co-elevating relationship. A relationship where there was a peer-to-peer commitment to each other's success, to telling the truth, right? A commitment to going higher together. They're making a difference in the world and supporting each other and making a difference in the world. And in co-creating, and it doesn't have to be the same thing, but just really co-creating in this world together. 50% of Americans say they don't have that in their life. And of those who say they don't have that in their life, 60% of them are married. So, I look at this group of men here and I ask us, are we living in co-elevation in all relationships of our life? In our businesses, in our intimate relationships with our children, with our neighbors, right? Even that jackass that has that high, stupid fence or whatever it is. I mean, it's like, are we living like this? And that to me is the ultimate reason I'm doing all of this, because I feel like it is a return. It's a return to what we've been taught when we were kids. And I do think we've lost some of it. I want to go back to it.
So our last question, I want to
You got to have Isaac. He had his hand up a long time ago.
and that's who's got the last question.
Good.
Isaac, go for it, buddy.
Hey, Keith. So, Keith, I've been running businesses for more years than I care to state publicly. But one of the things that kind of fits in with what you've been saying is a mantra I've always had in my businesses, which is that give me the bad news today. The good news can the bad news can the good news can wait till tomorrow. So, by asking for the bad news today, it creates a sense of fearlessness amongst the staff, that they are free to share what's not going good. And it serves not only a purpose of getting transparency, but it also enables me to fix something sooner than later, because in a day or two, it may be more difficult or impossible to fix, whereas the sooner I know about a problem, I can fix it, or the team can fix it. So the mantra I've always had, and everybody knows, in any company I've worked with, is give me the bad news today.
Amen to that.
Business can wait till tomorrow. It's worked so beautifully for me that
I love it.
simple
I love it.
little
And so you hit right core to the candor. I'd add one other thing, which is let's not forget to celebrate. Probably a lot of entrepreneurs in this room are good at that. I want to make sure that we all get good at that, because that's what really drives the energy of a people. And then I want our teams to celebrate each other, because here's the end of the day. None of us as leaders have the time to run around playing whack-a-mole, leading our teams the way we really should. Let's get our teams to lead our teams. Let's get our teams to lift each other up. Let's get our teams to give each other feedback. Let's get our teams to hold each other accountable. The principle of co-elevation is a new contract. And I really hope that we adopt it, because I have found it to be incredibly helpful in the turnaround of General Motors, in helping Delta Airlines get through this crisis. By the way, I see Freddie Ravel. I miss you, brother. Please come and play my piano as soon as this disease is over.
Let's do that.
Anyway, I love you guys. And Ken, what a pleasure. If there's any way I can serve you all, let me know. I've really enjoyed this community. I really have, and I'm looking forward to staying involved in the sidelines and not in the limelight. This is a big week.
Our responsibility, guys, is get the book, read the book, buy 2 of them, give one out as a gift. Best way to do that.
Post a review on Amazon. Review on Amazon.
Support Keith as we have with our other friends, Dave and Jim Quick and all that. We all are here to help out. And Keith, thanks a lot for taking time and being part of this community. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for building this, Ken.
All right, guys, let's all unmute ourselves and let's thank Keith. Come on, unmute yourself, everyone.
Hey, thanks, Keith.
Thanks, Keith.
Hey,
Hey, guys.
Good man.